Good morning. Let us come to order for the Budget Subcommittee on Health and Human Services. Welcome. Today on our agenda, we will be discussing the various proposals in the Governor's May revision. And in that respect, we'd like to call forward representatives from the Department of Finance so that we can get underway with the first item, the Governor's May revision proposal. Do we have representatives from Finance who are prepared to present? Please come forward if you would, introduce yourself, and we are ready when you are.
Good morning, Kristen Shelton, Department of Finance. I'm pleased to present to you the May revision proposal to create the state's first income tax credit to help low-income workers. The credit will be available beginning in the 2015 tax year and will generally follow eligibility requirements of the existing federal earned income tax credit. However, it will be limited to wage income, excluding self-employment income. The total cost of this credit or this program is roughly $400 million beginning in 15-16. Our targeted credit will provide a refundable credit for wage income for households as follows, and it kind of generally follows the composition of the household. For a household that has no qualifying children, they would be able to get a 7.65% credit for income up to $6,580. If you have one qualifying child, it increases to $9,880, and if you have two or more qualifying children, it's $13,870. The proposed state program complements that federal earned income tax credit, matching 85% of the credit. So different than some other states where they match at a much lower percentage rate, we're kind of targeting our credit to the federal phase-in range and then begin to taper off as the federal credit continues to increase. This targeted approach will provide for a much greater benefit for each household that's affected. The maximum credit really depends on the combination of earned income, so how much you earned, and then the qualifying children, with the maximum benefits starting with no dependents at about $200, increasing up to a maximum of up to $2,600 if you have three or more children. The program will be established permanently through budget trailer bill, but the level of the funding will require a commitment to fund it each year through the annual budget process to apply the adjustment factor. Because the May revision proposes to implement this credit midway through the 2015 tax year that's already underway, one-time resources are also proposed for the Franchise Tax Board to implement the program. This includes contract funding to support a variety of system changes. It does include a delay associated with the Franchise Tax Board's Enterprise Data Revenue Project, but it's necessary to do that to implement during that 2015 tax filing season. The resources also propose to support a robust education and outreach program, and it will build upon existing outreach activities. So the Franchise Tax Board today already provides outreach about the federal earned income tax program, as well as to assist low-income taxpayers in filing to get refunds, because most of them would be eligible for a full refund of any withheld tax amounts. And they'll build upon that, increasing their outreach activities to the equivalent of 5 per month now, going up to 7 or 8 per month with the resources that we're providing here. And the resources will also help accelerate a review of refund claims before those refunds are issued to help prevent against improper payments that are known to exist in the federal program, as well as the experience in other states. With that, I will turn it over to you if you have any questions. Happy to answer them.
Thank you. I'm going to establish the roll. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Assemblymember Thurman.
Here.
Bonta.
Here.
Chu. Here. Grove. Jones. Quorum.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on the ITC proposal? Mr. Chu.
No questions, just a comment. I just want to say, I think, speaking for many of us on the Democratic side of the aisle, just how thrilled I am that we're moving forward with this proposal. About 20 years ago, I worked for an anti-poverty think tank, and one of the things that we always believed was that the federal earned income tax credit was one of the most effective ways to lift working families out of poverty. And this is an idea that is long overdue. I know there's still some questions about whether we've targeted this in exactly the right way, and obviously we will have that conversation. But I, for one, just want to add my voice in thanking the governor and his administration for moving forward with this.
Mr. Bonta.
I want to echo the same comments and just say thank you to the administration for putting this proposal in. There's a lot we have to do to address poverty and income inequality in the state of California, and this is a major contribution to that effort. So really appreciate this first step. I spent a little bit of time looking at some other models throughout the country, and in New York in particular, they have, of course, the federal EITC. They have a state EITC, and the city of New York has its own city EITC. So building on the different layers, I think, can really help make robust the tools that we have to address poverty. So I just want to thank the administration for this contribution.
So it must be nice to be getting thanks right at the start of the budget season.
In the tax world.
Accept it, because as my colleagues have stated, this is historic and groundbreaking that California would be considering for the first time an EITC and would have one. As my colleagues have said, we live in a state that has such wealth, but yet such poverty and such disparity. And so the impact of this is just significant. So I, too, am appreciative of the governor's leadership and vision on this, and coincidentally, a co-author of a bill that would actually introduce the EITC. So we have strong feelings on it, and we think it's very powerful to the people of California and to their success. So thank you. We do want to, if there's anyone here from the Franchise Tax Board that would want to have a few remarks, we certainly want to hear from you, as you all will be implementing what we're all just gushing about and dreaming about. We'd be welcome any remarks that you all might have. If you would, just come forward and please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Jeannie Harriman from the Franchise Tax Board.
And I'm Kathy Cleek, and I'm the CIO at Franchise Tax Board.
So thank you for having us today. And Ms. Shelton, thank you for your description of our activities. I think they were adequately stated in regards to the resources that we've requested in the finance letter itself. We are excited to partner to get this program up and running. There's a lot we need to get done in the next 6 months, so we're ready to go as soon as this legislation passes, and we appreciate your support in approving these resources.
Please. Thank you. Is there anyone here from the LEO's office?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members. Ryan Woolsey with the Legislative Analyst's Office. The proposed EITC is one of the very few priorities that the governor has identified for discretionary resources in the May revision. And we note that the legislature has an opportunity now to determine whether it shares the governor's priorities for limited discretionary resources, whether they should be dedicated to this purpose or to some other priority. But that being said, we think the proposed EITC does merit serious consideration. As we noted in our December report on options for a state EITC, the federal EITC is one of the major federal anti-poverty programs and has been demonstrated to reduce poverty and encourage work, particularly among low-skilled and low-wage single parents. While the proposed EITC does differ in substantive ways from the federal EITC, we do believe it would be beneficial to many of the state's lowest income residents. We also note that there are inherent trade-offs in the governor's proposal as it's currently structured, and the legislature may wish to consider these trade-offs as it moves forward with the budget process. Some of the key trade-offs which have been identified so far are that this proposal would focus the resources on very low-income households, and there is a trade-off between the amount of a benefit that the legislature can provide and the number of people that it can provide it to. If the legislature were to expand the number of people that the credit would be available to while holding constant the amount of revenue loss associated with the credit, the amount of benefit per person would have to be reduced. Second, the governor's proposal, as mentioned, does exclude earnings from self-employment. This is in order to help limit concerns about improper payments, which have been significant in the federal earned income tax credit. This will allow the Franchise Tax Board to likely have less resources dedicated to enforcement than they otherwise would have to. But on the other hand, this policy choice will exclude certain individuals who have primarily self-employment income from receiving the credit. Finally, the governor's proposal is structured to allow the state to dynamically adjust the amount of the credit from year to year. This is valuable to the state in terms of its budgeting processes, as if the state were to have a year in the future where the general fund condition is less healthy, it would be relatively simple to adjust downward the amount of revenue loss associated with the credit. At the same time, this could introduce some uncertainty for the beneficiaries of the credit, and we note that the periods of time when the state has budget difficulty often coincide with economic recessions, which reduce the resources available to low-income families as well. With respect to the state operations proposal from the Franchise Tax Board, we would only note that we think it's generally reasonable. It could change if the legislature chooses to modify the governor's proposal. And we would recommend that the legislature first adopt provisional language that would require the Franchise Tax Board to report to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee on the amount of the final increase for their information technology project that will be impacted by implementation, prior to making additional funds up to the amount they've requested available. And second, to adopt supplemental reporting language that would request an update on implementation of the EITC program by January 10, 2016, so that the legislature can be apprised of any issues that had arisen during the very rapid timeline for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the LAO's office? Clearly noted your suggestions. I would say that it's certainly a step in the right direction and a good start, and that California is joining what 25 other states have done, I think, is a step in the right direction, and certainly it's time. I don't think it's the end of the conversation about how this will get implemented. I think we're taking the first step, and we'll welcome all the kinds of recommendations that you just articulated as we go forward. So with that, I'd like to see if there are any public comment. Come forward, please. We'll have public comment, 1 minute each speaker.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members of the committee. My name is Camille Dixon, and I'm testifying on behalf of Jerome Horton, Chairman of the State Board of Equalization and member of the Franchise Tax Board. Mr. Horton commends the governor's leadership in proposing a state earned income tax credit to help lift nearly 2 million of our state's poorest workers out of poverty. His proposal also provides us a unique opportunity to recapture the $1.8 billion in federal EITC that goes unclaimed annually, and to establish an oversight system that ensures that the state EITC is distributed to those who need it. The lost economic impact due to the unclaimed $1.8 billion EITC dollars amounts to over $2.1 billion in additional business sales output and 13,800 additional jobs, more than $760 million in wages or labor income, and more than $137 million in additional tax revenue for state, county, and city governments. He respectfully requests that you consider allowing the BOE and FTB to submit a budget proposal that encourages a formalized volunteer income tax assistance collaboration between the Board of Equalization and Franchise Tax Board in recognition of our current success, and allocate funding to the BOE and FTB for the purpose of expanding the VITA outreach and administration statewide. With the VITA program, the BOE and FTB have assisted more than 288,000 taxpayers to capture upwards of $114 million in earned income tax credit. With a fraction of the $384 million you are proposing to spend, we can help even more of the working poor capture billions of dollars in federal funds. We have the capacity to do even more, but lack the administration to coordinate an effective outreach program. During fiscal year 2012, 3.2 million Californians claimed $7.3 billion earned income tax credit dollars, which generated a total economic impact of $8.6 billion in business sales output, supported more than 55,000 jobs, and created more than $3 billion in labor income. As a state, we must consider strategies that will allow us to increase the amount of federal funding returning to California.
Question to the speaker. Do you have an outline of the proposal that Chairman Horton would like the committee to consider?
We can provide that to the committee.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And please thank the chairman for his interest in this and his advocacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Stoll-Prevensky, Children's Defense Fund. We greatly appreciate the administration's proposal to create a state earned income tax credit. We think an earned income tax credit is a really critical part of a comprehensive plan to end child poverty for 1 in 4 California children. The EITC, we know from research, improves child health, improves educational outcomes, and improves future earnings. The administration's proposal is a good foundation to build upon, particularly the fact that it directs larger credits to the lowest income families and individuals, and the fact that it's refundable as well is a really positive part. We would like to see the proposal incorporate a few key components from some of the legislative proposals moving through both houses, authored by members of both parties. First, the administration's proposal doesn't reach millions of Californians who are struggling, including many who are living below the poverty line. We can maximize the poverty fighting effects of this earned income tax credit by raising the cap of the income cap. And I do appreciate the recommendation in the proposal, or in the agenda, around making sure that this is a first step to reach other families. Secondly, we are concerned about the fact that it only applies to wages and not self-employment income. We think that there are a lot of hardworking self-employed individuals at the lowest levels that are benefiting from the federal credit that should be able to benefit from the state credit. So we would look forward to look into that a little bit more. And finally, I do want to note that the fact that this just sets a minimum of 0% in the actual law that then has to be the credit percentage would have to be dealt with through the budget process every year means that we're kind of at the whim of the budget process rather than setting it permanently into law. And we know from our experience that when budget times gets tough, it's children and the poor that are often the first to get cut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Mike Carroll with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. We also stand in support of the EITC proposal. We are very pleased at the targeting of the proposal because in many cases it will actually serve families who are in deep poverty, which is, we've testified many times to this committee and to the Senate committees, is a very high priority for us that we would like to see addressed. So this proposal does do that in large measure, and we think that's a very good feature of it. We would support the remarks of the Children's Defense Fund, in particular the issues around self-employment. We think that while we recognize there have been some issues in terms of the reliability of the claims made for some folks with self-employment, excluding them entirely is really harmful to many people who do rely on that. That is often the foothold that they get in the economy is through self-employment before they go into a wage-based job. So we would encourage the committee to make an amendment to the language that would allow people with self-employment to be able to claim the credit also. And then lastly, we would be remiss if we did not note that as much as we support an EITC, only 20% of CalWORKs recipients actually have earnings from work. So many families within CalWORKs don't benefit from this proposal, and thus we would underscore some of the other proposals that we've made to the committee throughout the year, such as repealing the maximum family grant, increasing the CalWORKs grant above the deep poverty level for families, continue to be a priority, and we would urge this committee to take action on those items in addition to supporting the EITC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Louis Brown. I'm with PolicyLink Research and Advocacy Institute based in Oakland, California. I just want to echo the comments of the Western Center as well as the Children's Defense Fund. We commend the governor on this very solid proposal. The assistance that it provides to those in deep poverty is welcomed. I'd just like to offer two suggestions for strengthening the governor's proposal, both of which are reflected in other proposals that have been introduced on the Senate side and the Assembly side. So the first is with regards to the class of childless workers or workers without qualifying children that are eligible for the credit. As you may know, under the federal EITC, workers without qualifying children between the ages of 21 and 25 and those over 64 are not eligible for the credit at all. That leaves out a good number of folks, especially between 21 and 25, who are just starting out in their careers, who could use some motivation to get into the workforce, to gain skills, to put them on a pathway to gaining better paying good jobs. Both President Obama and Congressman Paul Ryan, amongst others, have recommended in their own EITC reform proposals that workers between the ages of 21 and 25 without qualifying children be allowed to qualify for the credit. Secondly, I think another way that the governor's proposal could be strengthened is by delaying the onset of the phase-out range. The governor's proposal, under the governor's proposal, the EITC phases out pretty quickly, and so we can extend the benefit of the EITC by delaying the phase-out range. So thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Meck on behalf of the County Welfare Directors Association. We'd like to thank the Assembly Democrats and the Governor for your work on the proposal that's in the May revision. My members have been advocating for a state earned income tax credit for several years now for all of the reasons that you've already heard that I won't restate. I mean, one of the beauties of the state earned income tax credit is that you have the ability to flexibly target it. You can set rules. You can decide who benefits from it. So the ideas that you're hearing in the room, the fact that you have the control over not just this year but in future years, how you morph the EITC to meet the best anti-poverty goals is one of the virtues of the proposal. So we're very, very excited to see it. We do believe it's foundational to a comprehensive anti-poverty strategy. And you've heard we have other ideas as well. The Western Center ticked off a few, and we'd like to see some of those as well. But that's not faint praise for the EITC. It really is a major step forward, and we're in support.
Thank you.
Kelly Brooks on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Santa Clara County. We're here in support. We'd like to thank the governor for including this anti-poverty strategy. We'd also like to thank the subcommittee for your work over the last couple of years on looking at strategies to reduce poverty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Judy Darnell with United Ways of California, and I'm here representing 34 local United Ways across the state. We really thank the governor and this committee and the chairman for some of the work that's been done on helping to create a state EITC this year. We strongly support the proposal that's in the Assembly, and we have been supportive of the ones in the Senate as well. We do feel that the governor's proposal is very foundational and needs to be built upon. One of the greatest concerns we have is that the low income limits only reach people mainly who are not required to file state income tax, so that there needs to really be money in the proposal for very comprehensive outreach. United Ways have run VITA sites and have done EITC outreach. We know how hard it is to reach some of the folks that qualify. And we also hope that the income limits are increased to reach some of the folks, and with an amount of money that they can really have an amount that makes a difference with some of their living expenses, such as transportation, such as car repair that helps them get to work. So we'd like to see the committee consider both higher income limits and some extensive outreach, and we'll be happy to be submitting some of the recommendations in writing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Esley. I'm with the Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations, representing families and children that live way below 31 or 21% of the poverty level. And while this proposal is a great proposal, it doesn't really help our families living in deep poverty, like the MFC children or the families that are hit the 24-month clock. So if I had a limited pot of money, first, I would use it for those families, then I would use it for EITC. So I think you need to spend your money wisely and make sure you help the people who are in deep, deep poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers and for all your ideas for consideration about implementation, about what future years might look like. As many of the speakers have noted, that this is a key piece, but one piece of a strategy on poverty reduction. And we do think that there are other ideas that are very worthy, including, the cap, lifting the cap on the maximum family grant, and that there are other ideas that will continue to be discussed and debated going forward. But we do have an opportunity to take a step here now, and I'm going to be asking the committee for a motion and to take action on the governor's May revision EITC proposal with the associated funding and position authority at the Franchise Tax Board for the 2015-16 year and as an ongoing tax credit in California for working families. As part of this, adopted associated trailer bill as placeholder, subject to further refinement if needed in the trailer bill process, and add the following language to the trailer bill. That is the intent of the legislature that the state EITC established in this section will be expanded in future years as state budget conditions permit to benefit a broader section of working poor Californians. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Member Chu, seconded by Member Bonta. Please call the roll.
Could I just speak for 30 seconds? As I said before, I think we're all extremely gratified that this proposal is where it is, and obviously I am going to support it. That being said, we have certainly gotten a lot of feedback from the community of folks that are experts in this area, and whatever level of dollars we are able to peg here, I do hope the administration can have a conversation with that broader community so that we can really ensure that every dollar we spent will be best utilized in bringing folks out of poverty. So happy to support this with the caveat that obviously, as our chairman said, there will be further revisions to this to hopefully make this the strongest program possible. And like the chairman, I'm also a co-author of the legislative earned income tax credit proposal that's moving forward, and look forward to that conversation.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Thurman?
Aye.
Bonta?
Aye.
Chu?
Aye.
Grove? Jones has 3.
That motion passes. Thank you. Thank you for all your testimony